and I juggle it the whole time.
Oh, I noticed. Yeah, as you pace back and forth. Good morning. This is the PhiLAWsophy podcast with attorney Brenton Begley and Therron Causey. Brenton Begley's me. Therron Causey's the guy pacing in front of the camera. If you're watching, if you're listening, he's causing all the shuffling sounds. So, hey, Therron, how you doing, man?
Hey, Brent. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. And yes, I'll be pacing. It's commensurate with my thought process and the way that I can form sentences and express my opinions that I know everyone cares so much about.
Well, at least I do.
I know.
The same for your clients or wife or family or anything like that. Also, I will have to say you don't cause a shuffling sound. You're pretty ninja-like in your pacing. So
been working on it for some time. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll allow it. All right. So, I think PhiLAWsophy, the podcast, has evolved and expanded. Really, we're just meandering through some of the things that we're interested in talking about in the realm of law and philosophy. And I think the amorphous or nebulous idea of society and its influences also falls within that topic. And I would like to talk about that in the context of what are the cultural and societal influences that cause us to have, weird or bad behavior that contributes to maybe, obesity, maybe metabolic diseases, maybe debt, things like that. And this falls into kind of a socio-economic, well, not socio, but behavioral economic type of discussion as well, and psychology, all that good stuff. But I just want to start with the simple basics of what I have observed and what I've seen, and really how should we govern, how should we shape our laws around some of these cultural and societal influences.
Yeah, I think the point of today's conversation is more of an expansion on some of the I guess more leaning towards philosophy or philosophical notions of societal values and what we as a society, and I talk about society, Western culture, I guess, what we might be familiar with, right? As a culture, as a society, what we're emphasizing and how that is affecting individual growth and our thought process, right? How we act as citizens, as in our lives, towards each other. I think that there's the decisions that we make, right? Whether it's as simple as deciding what to order for lunch or what to buy at the grocery store. You talk about obesity being one of the leading factors with the health, in the health realm of contributing to other major factors that contribute to death, right? So sort of one of the leading factors that, along with heart disease and some others, that are a major concern. And I mean, I think that this sort of spawned from, look at where we're at today, and we have such a wake-up call, and unfortunately it takes something like a real event in life to often make people think about things. And we know that all the time from meeting clients, and they're like, well, something happened, and we just thought about it, and we want to make sure we got our affairs in order, right? And or maybe it's too late, and we say, hey, look, these are your only options left, given the circumstances. So we just kind of wanted to explore that a little bit, and and talk about that, just shoot some ideas around.
Right. If we can sum it up, is the question is, what is our cultural blind spots? As Western society, I think we feel very enlightened, feel extremely woke with our, advanced technology, our high standard of living, and our leadership on the global stage. It makes us feel like, well, we are doing something right. And in a lot of ways we are. But, it's important to kind of look and evaluate where we are, where our blind spots are. And it kind of brings me first, I kind of want to start with the idea of capitalism. Because, this is kind of where it all stems from, right? So we talk about obesity, you talk about some of the things that contribute to our point view with the way that we eat, our diet, the way we go into debt, the way we consume, our consumer culture really is what can encapsulate some of the blind spots, some of the issues that we have. And it kind of begs the question, about how we approach, capitalism and the treatment of individuals, and then, further view out the treatment of the collective in this country. So where the rubber meets the road, if we can kind of give a case study with respect to consumer culture, going back to the obesity thing, I wrote a blog post that, kind of has a catchy title. That was for a good purpose, to kind of clickbait, but I really meant it, when I said it's not your fault you're fat and sick. Okay. And, I wrote this in the point of view that the deck is really stacked against you if you live in a Western culture, to develop a metabolic disease. And the reason why is not just because of how we view, food in this culture, but also how we view consumption in general. And if you look at, let's take, college, for example. I mean, we live in a country, the United States, where it is not only normal, but routine for a 17, 18-year-old to go into hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt, right? Just because they want to get an education, and they sign up for that, and they say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And maybe this will help me get a job in the future. Maybe it won't. And that's incredibly concerning, right? I mean, you could graduate with an arts degree that costs you $100,000 and not, get a job. And it doesn't even have to be a degree in art history. It can be a degree in philosophy. It
Sure.
could be a degree in political science. It could be a degree in economics. I mean, these things don't necessarily lend themselves to automatic employment or, automatic employment that gets you over the poverty level after you graduate. So it's not necessarily a golden ticket like it used to be. And we still just routinely allow this sort of thing to happen. And, another good example is the amount of credit card debt that individuals in America deal with on a daily basis. You want the new iPhone, throw it on the credit card. You want to keep up with the Joneses, throw it on the credit card. And really, it's not necessarily about keeping up with the Joneses. I think that's actually a misnomer. I think a lot of it is the portrayal of what's normal. You see people portrayed on television as a middle-class family, and they have, all these nice fancy clothes. They have these new cars. They live in big houses. And, that in people's minds really affects them. It primes them. And they do that for a reason. I mean, our media and our marketing is very, very sophisticated and very, very effective.
They figured it out, haven't they? I feel like they figured it out in terms of advertising and creating an image that says this is the standard. This is what you're working for. You should go 100K in debt, or you should go $250,000 in debt if you're going to pursue a law degree or a medical degree. This is doubling down on yourself and investing in yourself. And I mean, in one sense, it does make sense, right? If you have a defined path, you're willing to, do what it takes to get there. And it's not always abundantly clear what that is, right?
Well, if you think about what we did, for a second, it's incredibly irresponsible what we decided to do. Now, you took a better path than I did because you went to the military first, and you were able to use like the GI Bill and things like that to help you, pay for higher education. I just went straight undergrad. I got a degree in political science. If I didn't go to law school, I don't know what the hell I would have done, right?
It's
the
like
plan was to go to law school the whole time. But I mean,
right?
Yeah, I mean, what would I have done? I mean, no one's going to hire me as, someone who has a degree in political science unless I worked on some campaign. And then, I don't even know how you get hired on that. I'm not even sure. But the law school was the plan the whole time. And then, the first year of law school, it's a real crapshoot, like 60% of people fail out the first semester. And then, you can make it all the way through law school, graduate, and that don't mean you're going to pass the bar, because, a good, 40-something% of individuals take the bar. I think it's like 40-something%, maybe 50, fail the bar as well. So, it's actually an incredibly irresponsible thing that I decided to do at 17 years old. Somehow made it happen. But if you think about it like that, if I was, if you put it in terms of an investment,
right,
over time, and I'm a prudent, financial advisor, I would have told my 17-year-old self, yeah, don't make that investment. Look at all the risk you have here.
right.
Look at all the exposure. And so if I'm being prudent and trying to limit my downside, I would not have pursued a career as an attorney. Now, sometimes, even though you might have a lot of risk, you might make it, but that doesn't mean that there's not a lot of people out there that have failed out, that are struggling because they decided to take on all of that debt at a young age and can't make something of it now.
I don't think that, and I don't want people to misunderstand. We're not advocating not pursuing higher education. I think we're talking about, this sort of preset idea or mindset that the way that you make it and the way that you achieve this status or this picturesque lifestyle is through this path, right? And this is the only path. And that's just true. There are, all kinds of different trade jobs that can work, that can serve to, provide a living. And you can have a level of satisfaction that isn't necessarily artificially created by advertising, right? You can live your life the way you see fit and enjoy life. It doesn't have to be, this trek through the wilderness to get to, some pinnacle mountaintop. So I guess what we're saying is that, when we're thinking about a societal view, so if we zoom out a little bit from the individual choices that we're making, because, I feel like so oftentimes we're just on this path, and then we're presented with, well, we can either go left or right here, and then we go right, and we just keep going down the branches in the path, right? Never kind of looking up to see what's around us and to have an idea of maybe what the landscape looks like from a different perspective.
Exactly. In a lot of ways, it's because we're primed. And I'm gonna keep saying stuff like this, but it's not because I think there's some grand conspiracy where there's puppet masters controlling the strings. I think this is inherent in a consumer culture where you have things like advertising and people want to build in natural incentives to buy their product or to do the thing that they want you to do. Right. That's what we're dealing with here, and it's not someone, some small group of people doing this. This is what happens in the competitive market, and the people who have risen to the top are really damn good at their jobs. And marketing is ubiquitous. It's no longer madmen that think of fancy slogans to put in a cigarette commercial or magazine. It is teams of people in every industry figuring out how to get people to buy your product, buy your service, attend your college, whatever it is. So that being said, we are primed as individuals to seek certain things. And what that priming does is allows us a couple of things. So number one, to act irrationally, right? Because a lot of people know intuitively that, hey, I could go to a vocational school. I could get a license in like HVAC, welding, plumbing, something like that. That's going to cost me very little. I'm going to be able to get out very quickly, start earning money very young, and I can earn a really good living. And it could be, very fulfilling and all of that. But a lot of people don't do that, even though that's the rational way to go, because they're primed to do other things.
Right.
Because we have effective marketing. The other thing is that it allows us to do is exercise cognitive dissonance. And the way that we do that is we, again, have been primed to believe a certain way, right?
Talk,
And
talk
because
more about that. What do you mean when you say when you're talking about cognitive dissonance? Can you explain cognitive dissonance to our listeners?
yeah, so cognitive dissonance is, the ability to just kind of tune out rationality. And we do it all the time as individuals. I mean, if you look into just basic human psychology, we do it all the time with stuff. And so it starts small and it builds. So we are primed to do that sort of thing, right? So the credit card example is really, really good. If you use the credit card to buy things, it allows you to exercise cognitive dissonance to rationalize a purchase that you don't have the money to make. Okay? Because you don't feel the immediate impact of that purchase. That buyer's remorse is spread out over a number of payments over time. And then they can slap on an 18% annual percentage rate and you don't even notice it because it is, put into bite-sized chunks. And,
Right.
and so if you give somebody something bad, but it's incremental, then it's hard to notice, right?
So it
Like I
sounds
said,
like maybe that old adage about the frog in water, right? You throw
yeah,
a frog in boiling water, it's going to pop out. If you leave it in the water, start with cold, and then leave it in the water, and it heats up, it's just going to die.
yep. How do you boil a frog? You do it slowly, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah, eventually it's going to start boiling. You didn't even know
Not
it's
that we're all
boiling.
frogs.
Yeah, it's very parasitic in that way where the parasite feeds off the host and the host doesn't even really notice. And I mean, that's the best sort of continuous revenue. I mean, that's how a lot of places make the revenue off subscription or really hooking you in and getting you addicted to the service or the product. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm not saying that like Netflix is inherently bad for having a subscription service or anything like that. But when we're behaviorally, psychologically used to that sort of thing, and we say this is okay, right? Then it allows us to kind of do the same thing with other things that might hurt us. So Netflix is a good example. Like I don't even notice that I'm paying for Netflix.
Yep.
Like I don't look at my bank statement every month, or it doesn't like pop up as a email whenever I pay for it. And I'm like, oh man,
what a practice, right?
Yeah.
What a smooth business model that is.
Smooth, man. And yeah, and they could even increase the price. I'm like, I don't care. I won't even notice. And so they'll, I don't even know when it comes out every month, and it's not like it's in front of my face, and it's not like I'm evaluating the cost benefit analysis of having Netflix every month whenever it comes out, right? And so that same type of acceptance, right? Like I've allowed myself to accept this weird contractual relationship, and when there's so many products and services that put you in that, I mean, they even have apps that will tell you what subscription services you're part of that are draining your account right now that you don't even remember you have, right? So we're so used to having these contractual relationships with the market that we begin to accept that as a model for life, and we allow ourselves to have this incremental detriment over time. I mean, going back to the whole obesity thing, I mean,
wait, before you switch gears to health though, and I definitely want to get there. I mean, we stay with the financial, right? You could use the same sort of thought with respect to student loans, right?
Yes.
You don't feel the impact. You're talking about irresponsible, and you're talking about in hindsight, my God, look what I've done. Look at all the steps that I took. Look at look at where I was at this year or this year. And you're putting it, you're scrutinizing that, but you're scrutinizing that with, knowing that you're now an attorney and that you have all this available information. But when you're in it, when you're faced with it, you don't have that perspective and you don't have that information. And you have this sort of primer, just like you said, that's saying, hey, look, student loans, you won't have to pay these for X amount of years. I mean, do you even know how long until you have to start paying your student loans off? Right? Probably as a student, you may have caught wind of that once or twice. I mean, the application for a FAFSA or for financial aid, all of those things are like a run of the mill, like run through this paperwork, meet with this advisor, talk with them for 30 minutes, get your paperwork in order, submit it to the office, forget about it, and go enjoy your education, figure out what you're going to do with your life, right? It's so minimal compared to the rest of the experience, but it's such a massive, it has such massive implications and consequences for the future. I mean, hell, you can't even get out of it, student loans with bankruptcy, right?
Yeah. And I mean, speaking of smooth processes, smooth business models, I mean, dude, you don't even have to pay. Like you're not even have to paying for years. You don't feel any effect of it. You know, you're just racking up this debt, and you know, you have another a psychological function going on too. I think the quote is attributed to Stalin of all people, but it makes sense that he would have said this. He once said, "One death is a tragedy. A million deaths is a statistic," right? So that being said, like what he really means is like it's hard for us as humans to quantify big numbers, to conceptualize big numbers, right? And so at a certain point, you know, you have this really smooth business model. You don't really feel the effects of it. This is the cost of admission. This is the cost of pursuing my dreams, or what I perceive to be my dream based on what I'm primed to believe. And then, you know, once it gets to a certain amount of money, it just doesn't seem real. It's so nebulous that it's almost acceptable once it gets to a certain point, because it's like the national debt. When's the last time you said they're concerned or, you know, depressed about the fact that we're in debt trillions of dollars? That means nothing. That means nothing to me, because I don't even know what a trillion is.
Right. I mean, I don't even think most people could distinguish the real difference between a million and a billion, right? We're talking about a vast difference in terms of scale, right? You're talking about trillions, and you're talking about the national debt. I mean, you're not even talking about real numbers anymore. You're talking about things that are never going to go away.
Yeah, and it's like something that doesn't even affect me because I can't conceptualize it. So it's easier for me to just accept it and move on.
So what does that
say? $1,000 a month for the rest of my life? Okay, whatever.
So what does that say about our culture, right? What does that say if in our culture it's the standard to have this ridiculous floating debt, because everybody's got that, right? Because that's the way you live your life. I mean,
it's because the people in power, the people that are showing us how to conduct our lives, are exercising cognitive dissonance themselves. I mean, so why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we, you know, why wouldn't we rationalize things away? Why wouldn't we just like partition our minds and not even think about the things that we don't want to think about, and then allow ourselves to be, you know, incur detriments incrementally over time? I mean, that's kind of the whole point of this discussion is how easy is it for bad things to happen to us very slowly over time and us not even notice and rationalize it away, you know? And
I'm not saying that I can balance a checkbook better than the federal government. I mean, I might be able to. I don't know, but I think that, you know, maybe we should be looking toward. What's that?
You probably put an orangutan in there and give him enough time. He can do better.
So, I mean, should they? You talked about there are models, or we're looking up to them and how to live a life. You know, and I have this, like, I want to reel away from that. Like, why would we ever do that? You know, and I was reading a little bit of Thomas Paine recently, and I was just thinking about how his thoughts in terms of the separation of the government from the people. The purpose of government is to serve the people as a sort of necessary evil, if you will. You know, does not vibe with the fact that they are our, you know, that they have now been substituted as the surrogate decision maker for our individual lives, or models for how we should, you know, carry ourselves. I just don't. And I think that the plain economic side of that shows that they shouldn't be. Right?
Well, yeah, exactly. But we have to contend with the fact that they have a pretty good grip hold on the media, and the media is what shows us kind of the way to live, and which is a crazy thing if you think about it. We just kind of let this happen. We let media and what we see, coming into us become the norm or what to strive for. I mean, that's why we have this culture of young people who are incredibly insecure and feel like they're missing something, incredibly depressed because of like Instagram, and you see these things that they want to strive for and these perfect lives that these people post and these Photoshop pictures with perfect lighting that people put out for everybody to see and try to convey, hey, this is my everyday life. This is what I look like all the time. I woke up like this. My life was amazing when I woke up this morning, and it was amazing when I went to bed. And your life is nothing like mine, right? And so, but individuals are not actually trying to say that. They're not actually saying, hey, you should be depressed and my life is better than yours. Everybody is just kind of in the same cycle of, hey, look what I'm doing. Look how cool my life is, and it causes this reaction in all these people. And so, when it comes to, if you're cringing at the fact that we're looking up to politicians as, models to live our lives, I mean, I think that's a correct response, because what it seems like we're doing is we're looking up to the wrong people as models for our lives. Because if you really, really think about this for a second, the people that you should probably model your lives after are not going to be hogging media outlets. They're not going to be posting all the time on Instagram. They're not going to be saying, hey, look at me. They're going to be humble. They're going to be virtuous. And not to say that people on Instagram or whatever, if you're in the media, you're not humble or virtuous, but if you're craving attention, trying to get famous, then there might be something there.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just a degree of clout, where clout's not necessarily vibing with humility, right? Just generally. But what I'd say, you really bring up a great point, and I think that if I could summarize that in a way, it's that we have an issue with instant gratification. Proliferation of social media, and as you're talking about, the posting of certain images of the way that, this vacation lifestyle or this tropical lifestyle, whatever it might be, where everything is just pure pleasure all the time. There's no, everything is instant. This is the norm. I mean, and most people probably don't feel that, hey, like my life's nothing like that. Right? But it's nice to be able to look at that. That's cool. But that's not real. Do we have that sense? And if you're a young mind, if you're a child growing up, I'll use my kid as an example, Brenton. I have had plenty of challenges presented in the last year where instant gratification is an issue. And I talk to my son, and he'll ask a question, and I'll maybe give him some sort of response that says, we're going to do this, this, this. And he's like, well, go ahead and do it. And I'm like, okay, we're going to go do it. Right? Yeah, do it now. And I'm like, relax, it's okay. Like we're going to go upstairs and we're going to do it. And these are the steps that we're going to take. Yeah, but why isn't it not done? Right. And it's just like this weird sense of, well, if it needs to get done, or if we know how to get it done, or if there's an answer to it, I need to know now, or it needs to be done now. And I don't know that that's a fair representation of reality and the way things work. I mean, there is a difference, and there is value in delayed gratification versus instant gratification, right?
Certainly, and which is counterintuitive. I think this leads into the lifestyle inflation that a lot of people experience. I know I experienced this because my lifestyle inflated very easily as I grew up, because I was born incredibly poor, grew up incredibly poor. And, I look at myself sometimes when I'm like, I need, I want to buy something, or I want to have the nicest coffee, or I look down on a meal like it's not something I want to eat or something like that. I think back to the times where I was grateful to have a roof over my head, grateful to have clothes that didn't have holes in them, things like that. And I realized, I look at myself, and I'm pretty hard on myself sometimes. So I look at myself and I'm like, what are you doing, man? You used to be able to live a Spartan life, and not have to have anything. You don't have to have material things to make you happy. Like, what the hell are you doing? And I grew up in a day and age and experience where that wasn't instant. It wasn't all around, and I didn't take it for granted. I can't imagine growing up in a time where you do take all of that for granted and just, need everything now. Because really, when that is the case, right? When that's the case, then you're never going to be satisfied, and lifestyle inflation is going to happen more and more and more. If you really think about it, the lives of the general population right now, the quality of life is much higher than it's ever been. I mean, middle class people, even people who are lower class, right, live much, much better than even the rich, centuries ago, especially, but even 100 years ago. I mean, Jesus, we have, the ability to talk to each other instantly from far away. We have the ability to get any type of meal that we want.
It's not just talking to each other. We can see each other. We can put FaceTime. If you have a question about anything, you can Google it or pull up your smartphone and search the answer, right? I mean, you literally have
entertainment right there at your fingertips.
Everything is instant, right? And I think that especially with young minds, like take the example of having a kid at a dinner table. Maybe you're at a restaurant, let's say at a public place, you have a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, whatever it is, and they're at the dinner table with you at a restaurant. And what do you see a lot of times in those instances, Brenton? When you have kids at the table, what are they holding when they're at the table?
iPad, man.
Right, they're holding an iPad, right, or an iPhone, or they're holding something, some sort of media device. Why?
It's an iPad with like sticky stuff all over it,
Why are they what are they doing, and why are they doing that?
Well, number one, they're playing some game, or they're watching some weird video on YouTube, and
right?
You have no idea what they're watching. The parents have no idea what they're watching, and they're doing that because the parents want them to be pacified.
Exactly. So we get to this point where we're using these. We're actually consciously creating cognitive dissonance to where we're trying to keep ourselves, keep the reality at bay. My kids are going to be terrible. I need to pacify them with this, YouTube, and they'll be quiet. And they'll be quiet. But what does that do? Right? I think that, and this isn't necessarily about parenting, and I'm not trying to cut down on people that have done this or doing this, because I've done it before too, but I'm just talking about the impact that I see, and we're trying to cut back from that, which is they don't know how to be calm. They don't know how to listen. They won't respond positively if they are put in that situation again without that YouTube, right? I mean, it is something that is working to their detriment as opposed to their advantage.
Yeah. I remember, growing up, there were 7 of us. My dad was a preacher, and he had the ability to kind of give us that look, like, I will, like, he was really good at making you feel guilty if you were being bad, and I want to be able to replicate that with people in general, but my kids too. But it's kind of mind blowing if you think about it. I mean, people back in the day, if you had bad kids that were going to be incredibly disruptive, you just didn't go to a restaurant.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
You can't go to a restaurant and have kids. What are you talking about?
Yeah, you can't. There's nothing you can do about that. You just had to sit at home and try to discipline your kids. Nowadays, you can pacify them, and I mean that's just part and parcel of the how we've accepted this idea of instant gratification, or something now to delay, doing something hard in the future.
Yes.
And so those seem to be different things, by the way. So let's delineate that. Instant gratification is I want something good now. And also, you have this other aspect to it that I don't want something bad now, even if it's something that I have to face in the future. I don't want to do it now, and I call that procrastination. So procrastination is an epidemic. I mean, it is, everyone is dealing with it right now, more so than ever, because we have so many things that can, take our attention away from what it is that we need to do. Oh, you have some mental health issues that you need to deal with. Not saying that, people need to just get over mental health issues or whatever, but you have some mental health issues you need to deal with. Fuck it, I'm gonna watch Netflix, right? like I have some term paper I have to get done. Netflix, right?
Sure.
I mean, like I'm going to do anything else. I'm going to check my phone 16 times because I got emails and that makes me feel like I'm working instead of pay attention to this brief that I need to write. Or
Right.
I'm going to jump on, Instagram or Facebook because I have instant notifications, push notifications that are going to tell me every time someone does something or has a birthday or post a picture of their dog or whatever the hell.
Little dopamine hit.
Yeah, you get that little dopamine hit, and it is incredibly addictive, but it also contributes to this surface cognition, right? I mean, we don't dive deep into things if we're constantly being distracted. And so it causes a constant state of procrastination. Okay, I'm going to do that later. Okay, I'm really going to pay attention to that later. And we're really doing ourselves a disservice. And so we have two things really acting against us. We have this need for instant gratification and this constant procrastination, which makes our lives very, very superficial.
And you talk about procrastination, and you're talking about maybe delaying results intentionally, negative results, right? Obviously, the notion of instant gratification is that you have the positive results instantly, but the negative results at some other time. And working against you in that way, I think that ties into where you were going about 10 minutes ago with the health component, right? We talk about sort of the financial side of things. If we're turning toward, some of the decisions regarding health, I mean, what does that mean when we're looking at, decisions that we make regarding what we're eating, regarding nutrition? I don't think that there's a lack of information regarding nutrition available. I don't think that there are probably few things that there is a lack of information or an absence of information. It's there. I think it's just the emphasis on this information and how that might apply to you, right? And
there's not a lack of nutritional information. Really, there's just there is a lack of expertise, but there's a lot of information out there. In fact, it's more like a quagmire rather than being scarce. It's more like you have to wade through all this misinformation.
Right.
And when it comes to health, nutrition, obesity, exercise, all that stuff, right? I mean, it's the same thing that we've been talking about. How do you get obese, right? It's just like eating an elephant, one bite at a time. It's incremental, right? We don't just wake up one day and say, okay, I'm gonna, for the next 3 years, I'm going to just pound fucking Burger King, burgers and French fries, and just see what happens to me. It's just we do it based on a series of decisions that we make in a lot of ways subconsciously, because number one, we're primed a certain way. Number two, we seek instant gratification, and number three, we procrastinate. I mean, if I want instant gratification, then I want a cookie right now. And if I know I need to exercise, well, I'm going to do that later.
Sure.
Right.
Or just one bad meal, and I'll eat healthy the rest of this week. Right. And I mean, it's like playing. It's rationalizing the same sort of thought process where you give your child the device at the dinner table, right? You're doing that to yourself. I'm gonna do what I need to do now so I can get the positive result that I want, so that I can enjoy this experience, stop being hungry, right? Deal with the negative effects later. Put off the negative effects and procrastinate that, and then promise myself that I'm going to work out.
Yeah, and I've been called, I don't know how many times, a health nut, which is crazy to me because I feel like I don't do enough to maintain my health or whatever. But if I'm like, so in workplace, even, in school, I remember, people would call me a health nut because I used to want to bring my own food all the time, eat good, clean food. And, I'd kind of look down my nose at like a burger and French fries or something like that and not want to, eat it. And that's not to say I won't ever eat that type of stuff, but there's a time and a place for me. And I won't, like, in the middle of the day eat that type of stuff because I know like how I'm going to feel and all of that. But in a lot of ways, I don't want to encourage people to feel badly about themselves and really the choices that they make. I want you to realize that a lot of this is subconscious, but it's helpful to be mindful about the choices that we're making. And that's what leads to this incremental building of bad choices that contributes to like obesity or metabolic diseases. One of the things that I've done is I imagine, have you ever played those like RPG video games where you had a health bar?
Where you have what?
Like a health bar, like health points.
Oh yeah.
So, every time you got hit, a little health goes away. Every time you drink a magic potion, it comes back.
Sure.
That sort of thing. So, one of the things that I've, done to help me become more mindful about sort of things and not mindlessly eat and let my subconscious take over is I've started viewing what I perceive to be unhealthy foods, like, processed, high sugar content foods, as being a hit to my health bar. And if I do that over time, like if you one Oreo is not going to kill you, one cookie is not going to kill you. It'll take a point away though. And because if you add it up over time, you're going to develop a metabolic disease. You're going to develop type 2 diabetes. You're going to develop fatty liver disease, which is going to contribute to the possibility of having a lot of other sicknesses.
If you had a graphical representation, if you are a World of Warcraft character with a HP bar above your head, and that's coming down and down and down based on the decisions that you make over time, is that something that's useful to show and bring, I would say, incentivize the mindfulness that you're talking about, right? And does that lead to a more free lifestyle? I mean, I think Jocko, right, Navy SEAL podcaster, talks about discipline equals freedom, right? Yeah. And you have as much discipline as somebody like him, and it might feel liberating. But I think that I would agree with the premise of this whole conversation in that it seems like the cards are stacked against you. That you are.
I can't tell you how many times I've just killed like a pie or like 13 cookies, like a whole thing of Oreos, and I'm like, dude, I didn't even know I was doing it. It started and then it ended, and then afterwards I'm like, whoa, that just happened. Holy shit. And it's mind blowing because of how easy it was and how I didn't even think about it. Like the whole time it was happening, I had to put 30 cookies in my mouth, and every time 1, 2, 3, all the way to 30, I didn't even think anything about, hey, this is bad, you should stop. And that's a problem. That's a big problem because I was not mindful at all. And there's lots of things that contribute to that. It is not necessarily your fault. I mean, marketing is good, right? I mean, they show, like, psychological studies show that, the way they package things, okay? Like the size of a popcorn bucket, the size of your plate, all of these things contribute to you eating more, okay? And so, these things are set up, the deck is definitely stacked against you to make you, mindlessly eat things.
How often can you drive down the street and see fast food, just lined up, right? I mean, take your pick. The land of plenty. And that would
we let restaurants tell us what portion sizes should be, right? I mean, so that's the thing is, like, we don't say, like, I've gone to a restaurant and I've been like, holy shit, am I going to feed a family of 4? This is a meal. This is for one person. This is incredible. Like, you can get unlimited breadsticks at Olive Garden. That's mind blowing. That is mind blowing, right? So we let restaurants tell us how much, like, is normal, and it's certainly not normal. It's certainly not normal. Otherwise, no one would be incredibly, overweight. And so we definitely have this aspect of mindlessness, and if you could be mindful and just pay attention, and that's where the thought experiment of the health bar comes in. If you have that in your head, just a little voice in the back of your head reminding you, like, ooh, 1 point. It's really, really helpful not to make you feel guilty, just to be mindful, so you're not caught in that 30 cookie, time trap where, everything stops. You don't think everything is Oreo, and where I've been trapped in, a number of times.
So I think you get to the point where you feel like, maybe, am I complicit? Like, we do have this idea of the cards being stacked against us, but we're also, that faces the other notion that we are individuals making our own choices, responsible for our own choices. Are we complicit in the results, right? And what got us where we're at? Do we have Do we have that level of personal responsibility? Do we have the awareness that we need? Have we pushed against that idea of instant gratification and the procrastination that leads us to that? I mean, it seems like a nasty, vicious cycle, and we've got to the point now where I think there is this breakaway, and at least mentally, from any sort of personal responsibility. This is the way, like, I mean, I've just been living my life, and all of a sudden this is the way I am, and now I need this level of care because of this disease, right? But nowhere along the way, where did we fail? Was it at the beginning? Was it a lack of emphasis in their development, the early development? Is it a societal influence that says this is normal? I mean, how can we affect positive change here? What do you think?
Yeah, so I think the way we affect positive change is on an individual level, and just to bring awareness of it. But really, it's what I was talking about before is being mindful of what's going on, and just I think that you've mentioned this many times, and really we're going to circle this drain until we and beat a dead horse until we really drill it into people's minds that it comes down to critical thinking. I mean, that is probably the number one tool in your toolbox to be able to navigate life effectively and probably in the best way possible. If you realize that you're being primed for certain things and you can be mindful of it and you can think critically, is this something I want to do right now? Right? Is this whole bucket of popcorn, like a gallon of popcorn with a quarter gallon of butter spread all over it, a rational thing for an individual to do right now?
My mouth is watering.
The answer may be yes. Okay. But a lot of times, if you really critically think about it and you're mindful, you give yourself that ability to be mindful, you can snap out of that trance. And that's the power of like meditation, for example. So meditation is exercising this muscle that basically keeps you from being just in this, autopilot mode, right? Let me give you an example. Let's say I'm driving down the road, someone cuts me off. If I'm not being mindful, I'm going to honk my horn, flip them off, call them all the words in the book, all that stuff, because I'm mad, right? But if I'm being mindful, then I have that just split second of time just to kind of be detached and say, hey, look, is this worth getting all riled up for? Is this worth showing other people that you're a crazy son of a bitch? Is it worth, scaring, your kid in the passenger seat, whatever, right? To yell at this person. And the answer a lot of times, if you go through that mindfulness, that critical thinking, is no. And even a split second, just some disassociation from what happened to you to direct response is incredibly important. And that's really what I'm getting to is, we are just incredibly reactive.
Right.
And that's that instant gratification. That is that procrastination is just straight up being reactive. I don't want to do this, or I want this, and I'm not going to think about it. I'm going to do what I want, or I'm going to avoid what I don't want to do. And if we can have that space and time where we're mindful, then we can create that ability to critically think about what we're going to do or what we're trying to put off.
I think that, Brenton, I would leave it with a quote from one of the Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, in his book Meditations. He says, if you're distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. And I think that speaks and captures what you're saying, and in terms of being mindful and employing critical thinking to, at least affect and be that positive change that you want to see in the world.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we suffer more in our minds than anywhere else, and a little bit of disassociation is helpful. And, it's important to realize, and the whole point of this conversation is to make people realize that, you're primed to be reactive. You're primed for that. That's how we're set up. And now we can effectuate change at the institutional level, and we can talk about that, how that might happen with, different type of legislative terms, things like that, to
Incentives.
incentives, hold lawmakers accountable for actually contributing to bettering this country.
What if you had incentives to stay healthy? Just as a random school of thought, right?
Yeah,
I mean, what if you were paid because you were healthy?
Right. Yeah. I mean,
what's the cost of
there's
all of
probably
the
some arguments for discrimination in there, and also a definition for what constitutes unhealthy, pre-existing conditions, that sort of thing. But I think that that's something that we could certainly talk about. But until we get this acceptance that, we need to do something about it, then we have to approach it at the individual level with a level of mindfulness, and just being aware that, hey, like, you're being primed, and maybe you should take a second to think. That being said, I'm going to go eat some Pizza Hut. No. Play on my iPad, and see you next time. It was a great conversation, and like our little expansion into more of a kind of psychological approach to what we're talking about.
Sure.
What we've been talking about.
Agree. Brenton, thanks for your time this morning, man. I appreciate it. Look forward to next week.
Yes, sir. Bye.
All right. Bye.